بله سلام، خوش آمدین به برنامه همبستگی افغانان. اسم تیمور کامرانی است و همچنان امشب یک میمان خدا آوردیم، شیخ یاسر فزاگا. پیش از اینکه به برنامه ما شروع کنیم میخواستیم که تبریکی بتیم به مادرای عزیزم، هم مادرای در هر نقطه دنیا که هستین. امروز روز شماست، مگر متوجه باشین که ما هر روز تجلیل میکنیم روز شما را. تشکری میکنیم از زحمت‌هایی که میکشین، تشکری میکنیم که از نانهای مزه‌دار به ما پخته میکنین. همیشه متوجه ما هستین. امروز روز شماست، امروز روز تجلیل است، بسیار روز خوشی است. ما یک آهنگ انتخاب کردیم، باز به وقت توقف آهنگ براتون میمانیم. بازم از جوانان خصوصا اگر متوجه باشین که امروز روز مادرتان هستن، باید دستا و پایشان ماچ کنین، رویاشان ماچ کنین، تشکری کنین از زحمت‌هایی که براتون میکشن. برصورت امروز ما یک میمان خدا آوردیم، شیخ یاسر فزاگا از اورنج کانتی اسلامیک فاندیشن. کسایی که به خود سمت لاس آنجلس زندگی میکنن اینا رو میشناسن و خودشان رو معرفی میکنیم. متاسفانه به انگلیسی صحبت میکنیم. اگر چیزی سوال داشتین، شما میخواستین که ما ترجمه کنیم براتون، بفرمایید. Sheikh Fazaga, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. We're very fortunate to having you here on the show. You have been, a foundation for our community here in Southern California for a number of years here. I remember when I had been to the masjid on numerous occasions and listened to your khutbah, but I remember specifically when we first met at an event that you held back 4 years ago. It was 4 years ago when I first was introduced to my fiance, and I was at an event at UC Irvine, and this event was called Before I and After I Do, and I recall that that's where we first met, and we could talk a little bit more about that because that was so touching, and I tell that story over and over and over again, and that's why I wanted to ask for you to come here tonight so that you can share some more insight into that, as well as how to communicate better between parents and children. I also wanted to have you talk a little bit more about, in depth, about some ways of keeping younger folks, specifically those that are between about, teenagers, 13, 12, up to 18 years old, to keep them away from vices. And this would be more geared towards the parents and how they can help relate to them. But before we go on, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. Of course, the folks here locally know you, but this TV station gets broadcast worldwide, and folks in Afghanistan would love to hear more about your background.
Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and to all your listeners out there. And thank you for your kind introduction and for having me on your show. And we did indeed meet 4 years ago.
That's right.
And it was a pleasure to have met you then, and it was nice seeing you again.
Absolutely.
And basically, that was a program that we felt that there was a great need for.
Right.
And that is, within the Muslim community, we are not very well prepared for marriage, especially when you come to a society that is so open as the societies in the West. Yet you're held back, or at least say you're well disciplined because of your Islamic teachings, then you end up, almost being cocooned, where you are unable to relate to the opposite sex or to the opposite gender. So what we did is that we came up with this program that says, before you say I do, and it was a way of introducing people to, what the concept of marriage is like. And that is really a personal passion of mine. Like I said, introduce myself to the listeners. After I studied my Islamic studies and came and became the Imam of the Masjid, there was such a desperate need for counseling. And what has happened is that people trust the Imam so much that they come and they would tell me all their issues and their problems. And yet I would listen to them, but by the end of it, I really had nothing to offer.
Right.
So I decided that if I am going to be trusted by people, then I better have the tools that are needed to help the people. So I went and I got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy or psychotherapy. Okay. And that has proven to be one of the best decisions that I have made for me personally, as well as for the people that I come in contact with. And this is really what I have been doing so
Right.
far, just doing a lot of counseling, empowerment, and what have you.
Absolutely. Every one of your khutbahs that I listen to, whether it's in Irvine, Orange County, and Mission Viejo in Orange County, or anywhere else for that matter, is just it's always insightful. And that event that was at UC Irvine, I remember there must have been at least 1,000 people there, because there was 3 sections, and I was there with my wife and my brother-in-law. Well, wife now. Back then she wasn't my wife. I had just met her, and I was introduced to her by family. And we went there because we really wanted to know what are some of the things that we should talk about, what are some of the things that we should be aware of. And I remember brothers were on the left, those that were couples, they were on the middle, and the sisters were on the right side of the room. And I specifically remember there was a couple sitting up in the front, and they got up and asked for the mic, and they introduced themselves, and they said that they had been married for 50 years. And they said that we still come to events like this because it's so important to always reiterate and to listen and to hear about other perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I tell this story over and over and over to people. And of course, I mention you and your khutbahs as well. And so what I really wanted to do is go a little bit more in depth into that event, because it was such an eye-opening experience. Quite frankly, like you said earlier, when you meet people, it's very hard to communicate. I mean, words come out of your mouth, and there's a certain level of shyness. There's a certain level of holding back because you don't have that open dialogue. And so if you can talk a little bit more about the foundation for that program.
Sure. So what we do actually is, and this is one of my favorite jobs to do, is what we call premarital counseling. Right. And that is, let's say people have met, and they have really liked each other, and they feel that this is a go.
Step forward.
Yeah, and they do want to be married to that person. Something that we really welcome, and subhanAllah, the beauty of Islam is that if a man and a woman want to be together, there shouldn't be obstacles to hinder them from being together. Right. What Islam says is, let us bring an ethical value into the relationship, and that ethical value is in marriage. Right. Now people want to get married so that they have this ethical foundation for their relationship. However, what is problematic is when you do not have the proper tools in making sure that what you have is not just a marriage, but rather it is a happy marriage. Right. So what we try to do is lay down the foundation for a happy marriage. And these really begin with 3 things. Okay. Making sure that you're getting married to the right person. Right. Making sure that you're getting married for the right reasons. Right. And once you are married for the right person, to the right person for the right reasons, that you are loving and living with them the right way. Right. So these would be like the 3 main components. Get married to the right person. Right person does not mean right person on paper. Right person means, is that person right for you? Right. Because many times you have 2 good people that do not necessarily make a good team or a good couple. Right. So what we're looking for is that finding out if that person is really the right person for you. Okay. And there are 2 things that we look for at that point. You're looking for the right person, so by default you are trying to avoid the wrong person. Right. Wrong person does not mean bad people. Wrong person means a mismatch. For you. And there are 2 reasons why a person would be the wrong person. Okay. Either issues that are related to character flaws. Okay. You do not want, let's say, to be with somebody who is actively alcoholic at this point. Right. But if somebody has done something in their past and you are willing to overlook this because of what they have become, then that's fine. But somebody who is actively involved in certain vices, you do not want to be a part of their life at this point. They are not right now. Right. And then we want to make sure that there is also a sense of compatibility. And I think that's where you alluded to. What about, shyness? What about people not wanting to talk about real issues that are of concern for them? Yeah. So when we speak compatibility, we're looking for 2 things. Okay. We're looking for physical compatibility, meaning that you must be attracted to the person. Right. Physical attraction is the very first spark that gets our attention about that person. Right. And that's really what makes a marital relationship different than friendship, because it's a relationship that can be expressed physically. Right. And for that, you really need to be attracted for the other person. And then the other aspect is compatibility is personality. Are your personalities compatible or are they not compatible. So what we do is that we establish the grounds and the roots for the fact that you are getting involved, with the right person. And once that is achieved, we want to see, are you getting married for the right reasons?
Right.
Let me give you a few examples.
Okay.
Getting married because of pressure is not good.
Right.
Family pressure.
Right.
Getting married because I'm too old or I'm getting old is not a good reason. And don't get me wrong, I do want people to get married. But if that is the only reason why you're getting married, then that's problematic.
An escape. Right.
People would say that, I have so many problems within my family, I just want to get out of my family. Yeah, so that becomes escape, that they just want to be with somebody else other than their families.
Not necessarily with that person, just out.
They just want to go out.
Right.
So now they may end up with the right person, but they're ending up with that right person for the wrong reasons.
Wrong reasons, okay.
Or you have people who say, and this may be, very possible in the West, because they want to improve their legal status.
Of course.
Okay,
right.
so they want a green card, they want to get married to somebody who's got the citizenship.
Right.
If that is the only reason you're getting married to that person...
At least be honest and open about it.
And remember, there is nothing wrong with wanting to marry the right person who will benefit you not only as a spouse, but through them, you can also improve your legal status, and that is fine.
Right.
There is nothing wrong with that. But if you are just looking for somebody who is going to make your stay in any area legal, then number one, you're exploiting that person, and you're not just being genuine with them.
Honest,
you're not seeing the goodness in them, you're seeing the usefulness in them.
Right.
And at that point, you're really marrying for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Or very popular, within Muslim communities is that I'm getting married because I don't want to do something haram. Okay. That's a very popular one.
Is that right? Okay.
Well, we appreciate the fact that people say, look, it's the West and I'm really getting, I've got my sexual energy out there, but I just want to make sure that I put it in the proper channel, in the proper place. We say that is fine, but you have got to go beyond you being physically attracted to that person as the only reason why you're getting married.
So you're satisfying a need that is not the foundation for marriage.
No, I mean, remember, we do want the marriage to have that element in it. But if that is the only reason you're getting married for, then, as soon as that need is met, then again the usefulness of the So this is what we like to do. And then once you have the right person marrying for the right reasons, then we want to make sure that people have got the tools to live the right way as well. And basically within the married couple, we have 5 main, what do we call points of contention.
Okay.
And that is communication, spending time, finances, intimacy, how to raise kids, and in our cultures, what are the boundaries for the in-laws.
Okay, right. Okay?
So these would be like the major, issues that are troubling within the marriage. And don't get me wrong, and I hope that the listeners out there don't get me wrong either. A perfect marriage is not a marriage that does not have problems. What we're looking for is that it is a marriage that is built on solid foundation, and when problems do occur, and they will for sure do occur, what we want is that we want the couples to be empowered with the proper tools so that they overcome the obstacles that they're going through.
Right.
Yeah.
This is essentially what I heard 4 years ago. Same message. It's what I call the foundation, the basic foundation of communication, is to be honest, to be open, and to be there for the right reasons. And I cannot tell you how many times I tell that story about that UCI event. It was 4 years ago, and there were over 1,000 people there, and I had the pleasure of speaking with you in the hallway, and I shared with you how I met my wife. Yeah. And that in itself is also one of the what I call foundations of a lasting marriage, is how you meet the person as well. And in my case, I was introduced to my wife now family through my sister-in-law, and my sister-in-law asked, what is it that I was looking for, and I really did give her a long list of things that I wanted. Part of it was a joke, but part of it I figured, well, is she really serious, or does she have somebody in mind? you know. And so she sure enough said, okay, no problem, I will see what I can do for you. And I thought, this is great, somebody's going to help me here. And sure enough, she did introduce me, and when I first actually wanted to talk to my wife, my sister-in-law said, well, here's the phone number, go ahead and give them a call. And I said, them? What do you mean, them? There's more? She said, no, you got to call the mother-in-law. I said, really? I said, okay, well, this is awkward, but okay. And sure enough, I did. I spoke with my mother-in-law now, and we had probably, I think we spoke for a good hour on so many different things in life. And then she said, okay, well, let's talk some more later in the week. And I called her again, and I said hello, and we talked, and I felt such a warm feeling. And it comes back to the foundation of how you meet the person. And from that point, you know, my brother-in-law actually brought the postcard and said, hey, we need to go to this event. This is really good. And I looked at it, I said, absolutely. And so that's how we ended up at the UCI event. And I cannot tell you how many times I tell the story. Yeah. And I tell folks to always be able to reach out. Now, you're reachable. You're reachable, obviously, through the masjid, but there's also other organizations that people could come to you as well.
Right. Well, at this point, we do our counseling services at the Orange County Islamic Foundation in Mission Viejo, and people are, you know, welcome to visit our website at ocif.org. And I also work as Director of Mental Health at Access California Family Resource Center, and that's a nonprofit organization based in Anaheim, California. And people are also welcome to visit our website there. It's AccessCal, C-A-L for California.org. And in either places, you know, people can get in contact with us.
Yeah, right. And of course, there's telephone, there's email, there's certainly a lot of YouTube videos that Sheikh Fazaga has published in the past. And we will also put this program on YouTube as well, so that you can refer to it in the future. I really wanted to take notes as you were speaking because there's so much good information. We really wanted to shed a little bit more light on the fact that there is help. Sometimes folks are embarrassed. Sometimes folks feel that, you know, they're not comfortable sharing their personal life with others. And I think that it's important to know that really there's nothing embarrassing about getting help.
Yeah, and you know, here is a beautiful thing, and I really appreciate you bringing up that point. Number one, you know, as trained therapists, we guarantee and we promise you two things.
Okay.
Number one is full confidentiality.
Privacy.
That is, I mean, that is a must. You know, what you tell us really stays with us. I mean, there are only certain circumstances where we actually have to breach that confidentiality. In case there is somebody's in danger, child abuse, elder abuse, somebody planning to harm themselves, or they're planning to harm others.
You have to help them.
Other than that, you know what, everything that is told to us is not shared. I mean, we don't share it with other imams, we do not share it with our wives or with our friends.
It
we
stays
just
between
you and the client. The other thing that we promise you is that this is a very non-judgmental setting, meaning that, look, I have my own struggles. The person is coming there to tell me about their struggles. So this is not a situation where I am better than you are.
No.
You just have challenges the same way that I have challenges. The only difference is I may have tools that may be of benefit to you. By the same token, by the way, I myself, as a therapist, I do go and seek therapy and counseling myself.
Okay.
And people say that, what good is it then that you are a therapist? Because by the end of the day, I'm a human being as well. And I have my own shortcomings, I have my struggles, and many times I need help in overcoming my struggles and my shortcomings. So there is really nothing embarrassing about going to a therapist. Now, in our cultures, people do seek therapy, but we do it within family members. We do it with the elderly. We do it with the imam of the masjid, which is really nice. What I'm saying is, this is all good, but sometimes you need a third party who's not really involved in the issues, so they can objectively,
unbiased,
assess and help with that. So for this, I would really encourage people to go out there and seek help. And by the way, sometimes the problems are not just about communication. It's not just about, I'll just give you something here. As a therapist, I find out, for example, that a good deal of problems that we have relate around intimacy, bedroom problems, And as a therapist, I felt that I was ill-equipped, like at a professional level, to give any advice. So I decided that I need to become a certified sexologist. And believe it or not,
there's a certification for that?
Oh, there is such a thing.
Okay.
I mean, there is certified sexologist.
Okay.
There is a certified sexual addiction counselor. There
Right.
is a certified sexual education counselor.
Right.
There is, I mean, you're just a clinical sexual counselor. But the point is that sometimes the problems are not as simple. You really do need professional intervention in the process. So for that, I would really encourage all the people out there, if there is a problem, and by the way, don't wait for problems to become big before you go to
it's
counseling.
too late, so to speak.
If you sense that there is a problem and things just keep happening
Right.
over and over again, I would say that is the best time to seek counseling before they become too big.
Before they're too big, absolutely. Now, in opening up to folks, for example, if you open up to someone, let's say that's a close friend, there's always that level of risk that they may think about it, tell other people, know that. But if they're coming to you and you're the imam of the masjid, how can they open up? There's going to be some level that they're going to hold on to because they don't want you to judge them.
Sure. My job is to create a safe place for them to be.
Right.
That is really my job, and that is the job of every counselor out there, and that is, let us just make sure that what we create is really a safe place where you can drop the mask, where you would let us in and share with us what is really happening. Now, we do not expect people to do this the first session. Usually what happens is that people come in the first time, they want to feel you, they want to gauge you.
They're testing you.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they want to see how far they can take that with you.
Okay.
And you will be amazed what people start telling you initially versus what their real issue
Problems
is.
are later
Okay?
on, right.
So at that point, I mean, as a trained professional, you become aware that this is what the person is trying to do.
They're opening
so
up,
you make sure that, you reach out to them.
Right.
And I mean, I'll give you examples. People coming in, they have porn addiction.
Right.
People come in who have drug addiction. People come in, and the interesting part is that people think that it is so difficult to come and talk to the imam.
Mm-hmm.
But once people feel safe, then it's not difficult.
Right.
So
and that's what you provide, that environment for.
It is just really a safe, non-judgmental environment. And for that, I am not afraid to tell people, look, I have my own struggles, the same way that you do. This is really not about you going to somebody who's better than you.
Right.
This is not the kind of relationship that we have. I'm not your teacher, I'm not your master. I just happen to be the spare tire on your car that
when you need it.
As soon as you get there, what we want is the original tire to go back in that car.
Absolutely.
Knowing that the spare tire can always be there if
when you need it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Now, since we're talking about the two topics, this is a live show. Would you mind if we take some phone calls?
That'd be beautiful.
Okay, let's check in here. بله برنامه بس دیگه افغانان بفرمایید.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question for Sheikh Fazaga.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I've met you a few times, and I've always been very honored and humbled by your knowledge and expertise. I have a couple of, off questions. It doesn't have to do with relationships per se, but one is if you can share, what is the rules in Islam as to having pets? Because I have a pet, he's so loving, he's provided so much for me personally, health-wise, and caring and loving. And my second question is actually, how is it that we can strengthen our community, especially the Afghan community, where we can build more personal skills, I guess, in regards to meeting one another, just building a strong community, I guess, in regards to, being strong, because I feel that sometimes we don't support one another as much as we should.
Right.
Perhaps I'm just not seeing it, but if you can give some feedback as to that, I would love to hear it.
Good.
Okay. Now, what kind of a pet do you have?
I have a small dog.
Okay, so it's not a snake or a lion or something like that.
No. I for
just cats or dogs, basically.
Dogs
Birds.
and cats, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words. Here is the thing. When it comes It said that Islam comes to regulate our relationship with ourselves, meaning this, with the self, with our Creator, Allah, and with the creation of Allah. So a Muslim is always appreciative of what Allah has created. Anything that is out there is really a testimony. It's a manifestation of the power, the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a Muslim is always appreciative of the creation of Allah. And the way that we deal with it is that we deal with it with respect. Right. So as far as pets are concerned, Islam does not have a problem with people having pets. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, animals are for different usage, as the Quran has told us. Some are for litarkabuha, so that you may ride on it. Some are means of transportation. And then Allah said, and some are for the sake of zina, beauty. Because certain things are really not useful, but their looks, like birds. Right. People keep birds, in a cage. So what we know of the Prophet ﷺ is that he was aware of people having pets and he allowed it. Okay. Not only that, but the Prophet, peace be upon him, said it's actually a sunnah, if you have a pet, to give it a name. Okay. And the Prophet ﷺ had his camel, and the camel actually had a name, and the name of the camel was Al-Qaswa, the speedy one. The speedy, okay. and in a narration it said that the Prophet was very fond of his camel, that a Bedouin once came and he said, do you want to race? And he did race with the camel of the Prophet ﷺ, and he beat the camel of the Prophet ﷺ, and the companions were very disappointed. It's like, because of the name. We cannot believe the guy actually beat the camel of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ smiled. He said, people can make it to the top, but it is impossible to always remain there. So my camel is fast, but it's only fast so long that no other camel beats it. Right. Okay? So one is to be kind to it, to give it a name. And I think the question that people usually have is, what about dogs? Right. Okay. Because of the hadith and of the different narrations. When it comes to dogs, it said that if it's a shepherd dog, if it is a guard dog, or if it's a dog that you have and you actually have got a dog house for it outside, then Islam would not have a problem with people having dogs and keeping dogs for that purpose. In therapy, sometimes people acquire pets as means of helping them. Especially people who are depressed, disabled, people who are feeling for example, lonely, with certain disorders within children. Right. Pets become really, really helpful. Right. My concern, though, and I would have to be honest with this sister as well as with the audience out there, and that is sometimes we have a lot of emotional energy, but we really don't have a place where we direct it. So sometimes pets really do come as a very easy targets and outlets for that emotional energy. Remember, we are social beings. Right. We really need to socialize with our kind, meaning that with other humans. So what we want to make sure of is that the dog does not become, a replacement the only place where we give and receive our emotional energy from. As far as the facilitating for people to meet, one of the purposes for that event, by the way, was that we really wanted people to come and meet. I mean, remember this, with the lifestyle that people have, people are busy at their work, and sometimes, they want to come to the masjid, they want to meet Afghan people, they want to meet Muslims. And people say, look, I live where I live, there are no Afghans around me. You said that you were introduced by families. What if you don't have family? And then at that point, what happens? So what we look for is that we make sure that we facilitate during our events for people to meet one another. And remember, when we facilitate, it doesn't have to be loose. What we're just saying that in a dignified manner, we really do need to facilitate for people. Eid time, Jum'ah time, Ramadan time. We just want to make sure that people can come and find their potential mate in that place. So I'm really with the sister, and that is, we need to be supportive of one another, and we need to do a better job in facilitating for people to meet. To build a community. Right. Yes, indeed. Okay. It seems like the lines are lining up. Let me take one more here. بله بفرمایید. لایو هستین.
Walaikum assalam.
Sheikh Fazaga.
Walaikum assalam.
I'm very happy you guys are talking about these two subjects, marriage and pets. I also have a question. First of all, I have a pet kitten, and my family believes it's najis. So if you can explain if it's not or it is. And also, when I decided to get married, I conducted a prayer called Salatul Istikhara. And when I would tell people that this is the prayer of guidance and this is how I came to my answer to say yes, they think I'm crazy. So if you can explain a little bit what Salatul Istikhara is, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for calling.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
A kitten is not najis. Basically, the word najis means that which is ritually impure.
Okay.
Okay, so something may be najis, but it does not have to be bad. Okay, so what happens is that a kitten is not najis. One of the objections that people have for acquiring dogs is that dogs are considered to be najis. Remember that people rubbing and touching a dog does not nullify or break your wudu. Okay, so it does not. People have a problem with if a dog were to lick you, it does not break your wudu either. Okay. But whatever the dog licks, it has to be properly washed. Right. And that includes, what people say that, do I have to change my clothes if a dog rubs against me or licks me? If they lick your hand but they rub against your clothes are still clean, because the skin of a dog is not really considered to be najis or ritually impure. But it's only the wet part of the dog, and that is the tongue of the dog, because dogs don't sweat.
Right.
So that would be the only place that it would be concerned about. And at that point, it does not break the wudu. You just have to wash your hands.
Oh, just your hands, okay.
Or whatever part it is that they lick.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be with mud or sand either. It is just the utensils,
okay,
or the pots.
Okay.
That would be the way of cleaning it. And the scholars say that a dishwasher liquid would actually suffice if that is the case, because the point is to make sure that it is clean for human usage, okay, afterwards. So that is about the pet issue. But kittens are not najis. Anyways, that only applies to a dog. As far as Salatul Istikhara is concerned, Istikhara really means consultation, like doing mashwara, like you are asking Allah to choose for you. And basically what it is that you are faced with making a decision. And you say that, oh Allah, to the best of my ability, according to my human capabilities, I do believe that this thing is good for me. But oh Allah, I am determining what is good for me based on my very limited knowledge of the when, the how, and what have you. So oh Allah, then you ask Allah. I said, Allah, I choose that, this person is good for me for marriage. I like to proceed with it. Allah, if this is good for me, then facilitate it for me and make it smooth and easy. And oh Allah, if I do not see certain things that you are aware of it, oh Allah, move me away from it, and move it away from me, وَرَضِّنِي بِقَضَائِكَ, and give me contentment in that which you have chosen for me. So what you're doing is that basically is you are making your decision. Guidance. I want to go through with this person. Right. But then I just want to make sure that I consult the one who knows me, knows that person, right, and knows the future of both of us, and I want Allah to determine this for me. You don't have to see anything in your dream. You don't have to have a sign. What it is really is you make up your mind, you consult with your Creator, you move on. If it does take place, that is then the answer for your prayers.
That was the path.
If it does not take place, then that was also the answer for your prayers.
I see. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. Let me take one more call and then we'll move on to the next topic. بله برنامه امبستگی افغانان بفرمایید. بله بفرمایید.
السلام علیکم.
و علیکم السلام.
گپای جناب شیخ بسیار مفید واقع شده. اما من میخواستم بفهمم که بالاخره شیخ صاحب گفت که سگ باید ما به خانه نگاه کنیم یا نکنیم.
خب بسیار خوب، من براتون ترجمه میکنم. تشکر بسیار زیاد از تلفنتون. خداحافظ. با من خدا تشکر. So the caller, first of all, thanked you for all the great advice that you're giving. And he also wanted to know, as far as pets, specifically dogs, is it specifically okay to have them outside in a dog house outside the house, or can they be inside the house?
Well, like I said, when it is a guard dog, usually a guard dog belongs outside.
Naturally,
because that's where
guarding
you
the
want
out
them to
perimeter,
be.
right?
If it's a shepherd dog, then again they would be
It's
out
still
in the
what they
farm
are, right.
and what have you. If people decide to keep dogs as pets, then they would be in the house, but they would be outside. So, you know, if people have like a backyard, a front yard, and this is where they decide to keep the dog most of the time, then this is where the dog is to be kept. But look, if it starts snowing, please get the dog inside.
Right.
Because that would not be appropriate.
Right.
If it starts raining,
Rain.
please get the dog. If it's too cold, if it's too windy, then at that point, you know what, there is a reason for that dog to be inside. But generally speaking, like I said, you know what, if you're deciding to keep the dog as a pet, then most of the time they ought to be kept outside. So people would say, look, I do keep my dog outside most of the time, but I'm afraid that at night it's not cold, it's not snowing, it's not raining, but I'm afraid that my dog is a small dog, I don't want it to be eaten up by a coyote.
Right.
You know, so for the sake of keeping my dog safe, I like to keep them inside. So, and that would have to really be, you know, the consequences of owning a dog, and that you would have to deal with some of these issues from time to time.
Right.
In this case, on daily basis, maybe.
Naturally, right. It's a responsibility you need to have. Okay, great. I also wanted to talk, since we're talking about communication, there seems to be, in relationships, there's naturally a communication between two people. But there's also communication between younger folks and elders in the community. In other words, what are some of the best practices for parents to be able to reach across to their children? You know, we get advice from our parents all the time. That's what parents are for, to help and guide you until you're old enough to decide on your own. However, oftentimes kids will have a hard time grasping or even believing that maybe, you know, my parents always say this, but that's not true. Now, can you give parents some tools that they can use to be able to reach across, just like you have with our community?
Yeah. We refer to these as the 5 T's.
5 T's, okay.
5 T's that I think that when you have them present, they really would make reaching out to your children, or just generally speaking, any form of communication easier. Number 1, you need to have time.
Right.
Okay, people usually don't just immediately come and open up. You know, it takes time. You know, they need to warm you up, and you need to warm them up, and that is, you really have got to spend time, because time is really one way of saying that I really do care about you.
Right.
That I am
You're
willing
investing
to,
time, yeah. Take my time. And
yes, take
yeah.
and enjoy my time with you as well. So you must have the time to spend with your kids. And unfortunately, what we see happening is that, you know what, most of the day kids are at school. As parents, we are at work.
Right.
After we come back, it's all about do your homework, clean your room, go to bed early. So it's just
You're
a
not
lot of
spending
orders.
time. Yeah.
You know, do's and don'ts, a lot of it. That is assuming that we don't have the TV on, or people are not on the computer, or they're not texting. So eventually what happens is that when you do not spend time with one another, people find other people to spend their time with.
Right.
And when we're not spending time with one another, then you can't really have that emotional closeness.
Right.
So number 1, you really need to spend the time. Number 2, you need to establish trust. And that is the 2nd T. And by that I mean, you know, people will share, and as children, you know, your children may come and share with you things that you may not approve of.
Right.
But they want to make sure that they can trust you without you being judgmental, without you, you know, betraying their trust later on, without you passing a judgment either against them, against their friends, or what have you. And remember, the closer your children get to you, the more things that you do not approve of, you're going to hear.
Right.
Now remember, I'm not saying that approve of the wrong. What I'm saying is that the way that you react to the wrong will determine whether they will come to you next time or they will not. So what we want to make sure is that, please make sure that when these things are shared with you, that you are aware of your reaction.
Right.
So spend the time. Do the trust. And number 2 is touch. Okay?
Touching.
Touch, like really physical touching.
Yeah.
In some cultures, you know what, people speak in loving language, or just touching one another in a loving way. Sometimes we do this with strangers more than we do with our own family. So you can meet your friends and kiss them on the cheek.
Right.
But you meet your own family members and that's not
wave.
something that we do.
Right.
You know, Eid Mubarak, you stand up and you hug the guy next to you and you don't even know who that guy is.
Right.
But with your family members, you know, it's just a wave from
a
distance. So what is important is that we need to express our feelings towards people not only by words, but also just human touch.
Okay.
You know, human touch is really, really important for people. And sometimes, you know what, it's just like the good job and just the rubbing on the head and the touching of the cheek. And all these things are really important. Number 4, they also say that we need to talk, okay? Because the time, the trust, and the touch is really to establish that talking. So it's not about us just ordering them. It's not about just commanding them. It really is a place for people just to talk and to be. And our job is not just to become big mouth, but also accommodate by becoming 2 ears as well. And that is, we both do the talking. This is not about me doing the talking and you doing the listening. And the last T is what we call teasing, a sense of humor added
to make
into
fun of the situation.
And not only make fun of the situation, but also to laugh with others and laugh at self with others. And that makes us very approachable.
Right.
You know, especially as a parent, you know, when they say that, oh, my dad is so funny, oh, my mom, you know, we always laugh at her, but everybody's having fun. When I say laugh at her, I'm not talking about in a demeaning
making
way.
fun of them.
But the point is that, you know what, people are willing to laugh at me. My kids always laugh at me. Or, you know what, I speak English with an accent and my kids just start laughing when that happens. Well, alhamdulillah, you know what? But the thing is, my accent does not offend me, and my kids are not supposed to be afraid of saying that, Dad, you talk funny.
Right, so to have that open dialogue.
Exactly, and where I am not only laughing when I am, you know, making others the subject of the joke, but I'm also willing to laugh when I become the joke myself.
Right.
And that really creates a good solid foundation for people to say, once we have these 5 T's in place, then we can really move on.
So that's
another really important component is to be aware of the culture of our children. See, we come from cultures different than, and I'm talking about the immigrant community. We come from cultures where our children have not been exposed to. And as an immigrant community, we have a tendency to want to bring our norms and values from the culture that we grew up in and somehow implement it here in the US. Now that would be great, but there are already norms and values and principles within this culture that are more powerful on our children than the norms and values that we want to impose on them that we brought, you know, from the Arab world, from Africa, from Afghanistan, or from these places. So sometimes within one family, we can be having a clash of civilization. We can be having a cultural war taking place. What we want to do is that in order for me to reach out to them, I need to be aware of where it is.
The context.
That they are.
Right.
And at that point, I believe that reaching out to them and communicating with them really becomes easy. And I'm not talking about I speak English, they speak English, therefore we can communicate.
No, it's more about the
environment that everybody is growing up in. And I believe that it is at that point we can really have meaningful communication taking place.
Conversations that actually make a difference.
Yes.
Oftentimes, you know, folks have, you know, like you said earlier, parents go to work, kids go to school, they come home, eat dinner, do homework, do this, do that. Oftentimes parents have so much pressure on them beyond just that they just don't have that. Now, when you're talking about spending time, you're obviously not talking about spending 5 hours a night. You know, it could really be maybe that 10, 15 minutes that they could just have that dialogue to be able to open up to their kids.
Okay. Well, yes and no. Okay. Yes, 10 minutes can make a difference, but I cannot rely only on 10 minutes to make a difference. Right. So what I mean by that is, and this is really has to do with a decision that we have to make as parents. Do we want a lifestyle or do we want a quality of life?
Right.
So you were working hard as a parent
Big difference,
to provide a lifestyle, a big place, a big payment that requires that you spend a lot of time outside.
Right.
But usually it's for what end?
Exactly.
And sometimes people would say, I am going to settle for less so that I spend more time
with my family.
Absolutely. So the person who works very hard and they take an extra job and they come home really late and they work on the weekends, I'm usually wondering why.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I am not saying that hard work is not good, but I'm just saying that hard work in order to provide a lifestyle may really not be the wisest decision that we make.
Right.
What we're looking for is hard work that provides a quality of life. I was told of this story. A father said that every summer he gives his kids money to spend on the stock market to get them trained, so that they make a living. And somebody responded, because it took up their entire summer. And he said, that's really great. You are teaching your children how to make a living. I wonder whether they can make a life or not.
Right.
And there's a big difference.
To be able to separate the two.
Exactly.
And understand what
and that
it
is, are we building people who can just make a living, or are we really building people who can make a life and actually enjoy that life?
So you should enjoy your life as you're moving along, not build, and then hope to enjoy it maybe at a later point, because you may not be here.
Yeah, and I remember one guy, he said that for 17 years he never took a day off.
Wow.
And people usually say this with a lot of pride. For 17 years I did not take a day off. And say, well, you know what? I wonder
at what cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one time he said to his son, do something for me, and the son said, do it yourself. And he said, son, for 17 years I never took a day off to provide for you what you have. And he said, Dad, for the past 17 years you were not available.
Wow.
So now the point is, you're not taking the day off, you're not taking the time to be with your family. And usually the question that we would have is that really worth it?
Right.
Is this really what we want?
Right, because we're trained from an early age to work hard, work long, and make sure that you provide. And at some point you lose sense of reality, and you can't step back in. And taking a vacation, for example, doesn't necessarily have to be a vacation from here to go across the world. It could really be a vacation from here to the park.
And spend time with your family.
Absolutely. Or you can go an hour away, or just go in the backyard and have a meal together.
Oh, and subhanAllah, the thing is with kids, people do not understand, and as parents we miss out. They say that the most entertaining voice to a child is not TV, it's actually the voice of their parents.
Right.
But what happens is that they are disappointed so many times that the children learn that they can rely more on TV,
turn off,
than they do on their parents.
Wow, that's a powerful statement there. Let me take one more call here. بله برنامه همبستگی افغانان بفرمایید.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yes, I had a question for Sheikh.
Yes, sir.
About the interest, riba. How do us Muslims deal with the interest in this society, and how are Muslims allowed to get the riba loans and to get mortgages for their house?
That's a great question. We live here in the West. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, and these are really the practical fiqh type questions that it really takes assemblies to answer. The general rule in Islam is that riba is forbidden. Not only that, but so that we do not become so focused on the specific. The general picture in Islam is that live a lifestyle that you can afford.
Right.
That is really the teaching. Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, is quoted as saying, "He who goes a borrow goes a sorrow."
Right.
And the Prophet, peace be upon him, forbade the idea that people borrowing money not to meet their needs, but rather to fulfill their wants.
Right.
At that point, people would we have to step back and say, is this really worth it? Do I really need to do that? They're saying that nowadays the average person in America has a credit card debt of at least $12,800.
Right.
And that's a lot of money, And when you think about it, it's mostly money that was accrued or debts that were accrued via the credit card. One beautiful definition I've read about the credit card. They say that a credit card is a tool by which we buy things we don't need with money we don't have at a price we cannot afford to impress people we don't even like.
We don't like or know.
Okay.
Right.
So what happens is that at that point we really have to look into, am I really making the wise decision here as far as borrowing the money is concerned? Now, Islam is not a strict, meaning that obey at all expense.
Right.
So it said that there are times when the halal never becomes, the haram never becomes halal. But what it says that, it said that we understand why people sometimes may violate certain boundaries. Now the question is owning, and that is usually violating the boundaries in times of necessity. And the scholars have different opinions regarding this issue, specifically of mortgage, where some have said, look, it is not a necessity, but it can be a dire need, and that is people saving money. Especially they would speak about, you know what, my kids are growing up and they really don't have means of saving money for their college education. I pay rent, let me get a mortgage so that in 20 years I am able to, you know, send my kids to college.
Right.
Or people would say, look, my kids need to go to college. I don't have the money to send them to college, but we have to have a, they need to take a loan. So it really depends on what is the loan taken for.
Right.
So is it a surgery? Is it,
you have to have.
is it a brand new car simply because you don't like your old, you know, Honda or Toyota? Right. Or is it, so if it is a necessity, then it is that person that determines whether it's a necessity for them or not.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. Somebody has 6 children, so that every apartment I went to, I got kicked out from.
Because there's too many people per bedroom, right?
And people would not allow. So in their case, he said, look, I can keep doing this, but soon enough, you know, people will just stop renting me.
Right.
And I have to lie so many times, and then neighbors find out, and so on. So for a person in that situation, I would say this would be the case. In some states, for example, with real estate being so low, sometimes your mortgage is cheaper than rent. Right. And some people say, look, I don't want a mortgage. But what happens is that I don't make enough money. If I rent outside, I'll pay much more than what I would pay, you know, for a mortgage. But like I said, there is the opinion that says owning a home is not a need. It is a desire that we all have.
Right.
If you cannot afford it, then put it on hold.
Right.
And other people have said, look, you're giving the money into rent, you're giving the money away, so at least what you can do is get a mortgage and maybe be able to save some of that money. And both schools, honestly speaking, they have their, you know, legitimate evidence for the position that they have taken. But there is a point where a person needs to make that decision and not rely on another scholar to give them the okay to either do this
one way or another. Right. Okay. Let me take one more call and then we're going to go to a commercial. بله برنامه وسیع افغانان بفرمایید. Hello, you're live on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I have a very quick question. How long do you hear me?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay. We have been listening to these people for 1400 years. How much more long do you need to us listening to these people? We have listened to them for 1400 years, and look where we are. And you, I'm sorry to say this, but you have spent a bunch of money, hired this man to come in here and talk to the rest of us. And I want you to clarify your position about the whole damn thing, you know. He keeps on talking about things that I personally, as an individual, cannot accept. And probably there's a bunch of people listening to this program, and he is still talking about the same good old stories, and to try to, I'm sorry to say this, but this is my impression, deceive people that you just put your faith in this things that millions and millions, I mean thousands of years, people have been listening to these people. And
so let me ask you a question.
And this gentleman is here trying to help the rest of the world to rescue us.
Okay, let me ask you a question. When you say these people, you're obviously talking about Islam and Islamic ulamas, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
And where are you calling from? Where are you calling from?
I mean, this is not the time to ask me that question where I'm calling from. I'm calling where there's a ID caller that you can see where I'm calling from.
Right.
Why do you want to change the subject?
No, I don't want to change the subject. The reason why I ask is because I wanted to know the context of where you're calling from. For example, if you're calling from an environment where you're actually surrounded by Muslims and folks, or even other religions, other Abrahamic religions, then I would want to ask you about that.
I was born Muslim.
Okay.
I was born Muslim, and I'm supposed to be Muslim, but I'm really to the point that I'm sick and tired of this goddamn Muslim thing. Look at this, the world.
Okay, hold on a second here. Let me cut you off.
From up till now.
Okay, I appreciate the call. I really would prefer
don't
that.
appreciate the call. Now, don't break the.
Okay.
You need to talk to me.
I will talk to you. Come to the studio. We would love to talk to you. You cannot use profanity on TV. We're going to hang up on you.
See, there is a bunch of millions and millions of people listening to you and I.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll address that.
And then just hold your horses.
We will. We'll address that.
Right now, that gentleman who is there.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just make this your show a little bit more interesting. How come
Okay.
you are shaved and he is not?
Okay. I will exactly address that.
Don't cut me off. This is the beginning of a discussion.
Well, this is not a show about you.
No, it's not about me, but a bunch of people right now are listening.
Okay.
Now, either you are not Muslim or
Okay.
he is Muslim,
Okay.
or vice versa.
Okay.
Let me let him respond to this. How come you are shaved and he is not?
Perfect. Thank you for calling.
No.
Okay. بله برنامه بسیاری افغانان بفرمایید.
Hi, I just heard the previous caller and I recognize his voice and I know who he is. And I think that this person should come on your show and have an intellectual debate with people who actually know Islam so that he can open his little tiny mind and understand what Islam actually is.
I also know the voice. Thank you for calling. Thank you. Appreciate that. So we have obviously some folks who, from the tone, you could probably tell that he's obviously not American. And some folks tend to take things to they cherry pick events and they try to make stories out of stories. So I do apologize for that. And then callers, if you wouldn't mind, when you do call in, if you have a point, please make your point. If you have a question, you're free to ask questions. But what I would ask is that you watch your mouth. This is a show, it's a family show. And it's a show where we help and guide folks. My goal here within the community is to take what responsibilities that I have and to share them with my community. There are a lot of folks in the community, young Afghans, who get killed on a daily basis, either because they get involved in a vice, either because they get involved with the wrong people who get them into the vices. And what I want to do is help those folks. I'm not an expert in some of these areas, so what I do is I bring experts like Yassir Fazaga to come and talk about his areas of expertise. For example, just in the past month, we've lost probably 3 or 4 people that I know personally here in Southern California, young folks who actually were killed, or either they killed themselves or otherwise. Breaks my heart because we left a country, and when I say we, I'm talking about my parents. They left a country that they loved and that they were born in because of war, packed everything, ran away because we wanted the young folks to have a better life. Now, I have been fortunate enough to have come here at a young age. I came here to the U.S. when I was 10 years old, and I completed my education because my parents actually worked hard, and they also helped put me through my education. And what I want to do is actually help them and guide them and have them go through and get their education. That's my responsibility as an Afghan, it's my responsibility as a Muslim, and that's what I do. Now, in areas where I don't have expertise, I'll bring subject matter experts, and we have over the past few months. And so for this caller, for example, he wanted to ask a silly question. We can certainly address it. I don't think it serves any kind of a benefit to anybody, quite frankly.
But honestly speaking, assuming the best of intents on his part,
Right.
I can understand that this caller represents a lot of people
Disenfranchised.
and their frustration with so-called scholars, with Islam and Muslims. And what has happened is, and I'm just going to assume the best of the call. And I will be honest with you, there are elements of what he said that I think they ought to be looked into. For example, the idea of remaining irrelevant. Okay, so in the midst of all the global changes that are taking place, in the midst of all just the revolutions and what have you, the advancements that others have made, a lot of people blame Islam as the reason that it has hindered their development and their progress.
Their personal development.
Well,
or just the society.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, people look into, in the name of Islam, there is war in Afghanistan. In the name of Islam, there is war in Somalia. In the name of Islam, there is... So what happened is that people say, look, how come if it's such a peaceful religion, how come there is no peace?
Right.
If it is a religion that appreciates creation, how come we have not made any contribution, at least in the past 200-300 years, to mankind? If Islam is as great as we speak about it, where is it felt? Where is the goodness of Islam and the Muslims in today's world?
Right.
Because Islam and Muslims in today's world are only mentioned when there is terrorism, when there is extremism, when there is
because that's what the media covers.
Well, it's what the media covers, but I also think that we might have misused and abused the name of Islam and the name of Allah. So I'm saying is that we can be open to these possibilities, and that is, we should not be afraid of self-criticism, and we should not be afraid of, there might be a point there. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes in the masjid can behave in a very irrelevant way. And that is, be it the programs that we create or don't create, the facilities that we have or don't have, the vision that we should have or the vision that we have. So what we want is that we want to make sure that, these points are not just looked at as, oh, this is the person who's hateful, tiny mind, closed-minded. But what we want to do is that, look, there might be a point there that I think we ought to consider. And that is the way that we are presenting Islam at this point, does it really serve humanity as it was intended for it? And I don't think that there is really anything wrong. Unfortunately, on his case, is that he started by making a valid point, but it was more of an insult rather than really genuinely asking, a good question. And that is, how are we to be relevant? So put all that offensive language aside, and really, we can pick up on the point. And you brought up the issue. Said, look, the relevancy of what we're doing right now is empower the parents with proper tools. That, maybe the 4 people that died this last month, may Allah bless their souls and give abundance of patience to their families, Ya Rabbil Alameen, maybe they didn't have to die. Maybe with the proper tools, proper guidance, and a proper work on the part of the masjid, maybe, some of these people could have been saved. If not them, is there anything that we can extend to people who are in their situation at this point that we can say here that can really make a difference? And I would say that this is how we become relevant, and this is how we make a difference.
Absolutely. It's fair enough to call in, but just simply making sure that you ask the question itself and what it's worth. One of the, I did bring up a few people that I know or that I've heard of in the community, and one of them was pretty widely publicized. It was a young 19-year-old boy that was killed by the police up in the valley. I don't know the context, quite frankly, so I'm not going to judge in either way and whether it was fair or whatnot as far as how the media covered it. But the bottom line is that it really breaks my heart because my parents sacrificed their lives to bring me here so that I can be safe and that I can have a better life, whether it be through education, whether it be through work or whatever it may be, so that I don't have to experience the hardship that they have had. Now, when I see young folks throw their lives away, it really breaks my heart because I know that there's help. I know that there's help, and that's exactly why we're honored to have you here, because you have several different organizations that folks can come to you, and you're respected in the community, and they have access to someone who can provide them with both sides of personal relationship, but also from an unbiased perspective.
Let me give you two examples. Issue of joining a gang and issue of suicide.
Right.
Okay. Usually what we have seen for people who have joined a gang, usually these are people within their family, they have lost a sense of belonging.
Disenfranchised now.
And what happens now is that my sense of belonging to the family is lost. My gang now becomes my family.
Right.
And when you hear
you have a common cause.
It's not a common cause only, but when these kids talk, about themselves, that friend, that guy will take a bullet for me. So now to them, what they're saying is that my loyalty goes to the guy who is willing to take a bullet for me.
Right.
And you know what? These kids would really take a bullet for one another.
What's a shame.
Because they have really, they've developed this relationship amongst themselves where their sense of belonging to that gang is much more powerful and intense than their sense of belonging to their families.
Right.
Sometimes people do this as, I'm already bad enough. I'm already lost. I'm already the black sheep in my family.
Right.
There is nothing
no
good
turning
that I
back.
can.
Yeah.
And you know what? I brought so much shame to my family. If I am good, I might just be the best at being bad.
Right.
And these types of notions. You have got, for example, within the Afghan community, and don't get offended now, machismo is very important.
Absolutely.
We kicked the Soviets out. We're giving America a hard time now. So there is this false sense of
pride.
Well, it's a false sense of ways of expressing your manhood.
Right.
It's when I have a gun, when I go and bang.
Right.
That
makes me a bigger man.
Exactly. And reality is that is really not what makes a man a man.
No.
Okay. But these kids, whether we know it or not, that as being something that was fed to them by the culture, and they only find their manhood
through that. Right.
And that is really sad.
Right.
And you know what? Sometimes maybe when you watch TV and the guy is Sylvester Stallone and it's the Rambo and it's the Chuck Norris and it's the Van Damme and
taking on the world one person.
Right. There is that sense of invincibility.
Right.
I am indestructible. And you know what? These young men, they just really don't know better.
Right.
And they go there. And as far as, I think you alluded to, somebody killing themselves. We have a contract right now with the county through D.D. Hirsch. And this is, bringing awareness and prevention to suicide within our community. People think that, Muslims don't commit suicide. We have Islam. Reality is, Muslims really do commit suicide. Muslims do really get depressed.
Yeah.
And sometimes Muslims do take the route of suicide to permanently solve a temporary problem.
Right.
Because that's really what suicide
It's an escape,
is.
yeah.
Well, what happens is that now, if we can provide counseling for people who are depressed,
right.
If you know some of your friends who are not feeling well, and all you have to do is just look, why don't you make an appointment at this place? Right. Within our own community, alhamdulillah, nowadays, we've got many brilliant, young therapists out there. I say, let's bring you in, maybe somebody that you can talk to. Let's have a safe environment for people to bring up real issues that are of concern to them.
Right.
And let's see if we can make a difference for these young men and women so that suicide does not become,
the only path.
Yes.
So there's issues of joining gangs. Some folks, for example, do it because they feel that because they can't integrate into society here. In other words, because of the color of their skin, because of the way they dress, because of the way they walk and talk, and sometimes an accent and all that, they feel that they need another group that they can belong to where they can not be bullied around, for example. So that's probably one of them. Another way is that, for example, folks will get involved in other vices, whether it be smoking, whether it be drinking, drugs, whatever it may be. And in all those cases, personally, the way I look at it, they're more of an outlet to escape from what they're feeling. Now, if you can explain the root cause of some of this disenfranchisement within the community.
Yeah. So remember, each individual, they are their own case, and they have got their own reasons as to why they do what they do. But usually, what happens is that number one, as a community, we need to wake up to the reality that we cannot assume that because we are Muslims, we are automatically shielded.
Right.
Because we are from Afghanistan and we're good people,
Right.
we are automatically, prevented
From getting into
falling
this.
into
Right.
it. Reality
Happens
is, look,
every day.
if our kids are growing up here
Right.
and they are exposed to these vices, they're going to make a decision either to be part of it or to reject it.
Right.
What we want to see is that our kids are making the right choice, and that
Right.
is rejecting it.
Right.
But the way to do so, we have to empower them. And that is, we cannot be afraid of talking, let's say, about drugs.
Right.
I mean, you simply because you avoid talking about a topic, it doesn't mean that the topic does not exist.
Right.
So kids do use drugs and they do smoke marijuana. You know, in my meeting with young Muslim men and women, I used to ask if you smoke marijuana. I don't ask that question anymore.
Yeah.
I ask, when was the last time you smoked marijuana?
Because
And
you
this is-
understand how prevalent this is.
But amongst high schoolers and amongst college students. And this is the exact, response that I get from a kid. He said, Sheikh, wallah, I stopped. I'm not doing it anymore. I quit. And I say, when was the last time?
All right.
3 days ago. Okay? Or they decided right there and then in the
Just
office
say that it's
you know
3 days
what,
ago. Okay.
right there and then they decided that they're going to
Right.
stop. Okay? But the point is, if we don't come out and say, look, we need to address marijuana at our masajid,
All right.
at whatever gatherings you have amongst parents, empower the parents to talk about these issues. I'm sorry, but if they say that nowadays the kids who get exposed to pornography, usually a young man exposed to pornography, the first time that they're exposed to pornography is at the age of 11.
Wow.
If you have access to the internet, you know what?
Right.
All you have is you just went to CNN, you just went to
Right.
Yahoo,
Right.
and there is usually an image on the right hand side,
some
dancing
advertisement or
and
something.
inviting
Yeah.
you.
You click there.
I
and-
have had a 12-year-old kid who was addicted to pornography at the
yeah.
age of 12. So, like I said, avoiding these topics does not make them go away.
Right.
It is when you face them with courage and wisdom.
Right.
That is how you make the difference.
So in one of your articles, you mentioned that pornography is the new crack cocaine in the community. Can you talk about what we can do as parents and as elders to communicate the ill effects of some of these, whether it be pornography, which is very easy to get to. It's just through the internet, and everybody has access to the internet, or some of the vices like drugs and otherwise.
Yeah, like I said, the first thing to do is, when you speak about instilling the tools, within our children to make the proper choice, in order to do so, you must have really implemented all 5 T's properly into the family. Time, talk, tease and humor, touch and trust. You must have all these things. And then initiate the talk. As parents, do not be afraid of talking to your kids about sex, about pornography, about drugs, about alcohol, about marijuana. If there is a vice out there, then just come to the child and start talking to them. And what you find out is that initially there will be resistance. Dad, do we really have to talk about
They're embarrassed, they're young, the
embarrassed.
last thing they want to hear is from...
But the reality of it is that if you don't do it, somebody else is doing it.
Right.
And you never know what
What they're
that person
saying.
is telling them. So sometimes kids are motivated by curiosity,
Right.
which we can understand. But that's when religion comes in, and religion is really, by the end of the day, the point behind it, as Allah has told us, is وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى. That is our ability to subjugate our passion. That is really the ultimate. We liberate ourselves when we subjugate our passion.
Right.
Okay, that is when we say that, I really have become truly a Muslim at that point. So what we need to do is that not only present Islam, but present Islam in an attractive way, present it in a wise way that makes sense emotionally, culturally, and intellectually. Because sometimes the way that we talk about Islam, I'm sorry, it does not make sense. Really, I'm not saying that Islam does not make sense. I'm saying that the way we present Islam, it really does not make sense. And it will really just make a lot of people say, if this is really what it is, then I do not see Islam contributing positively to my life in any way, shape, or manner. So they are turned off not because what Islam does not offer, but rather because of the way that Islam was presented to them. I
Right.
mean, we live in the age of advertisement. We live in the age of packaging. And many times it is not the product and how good it is, but rather it's all about how well was the product packaged.
Right.
I mean, just look into cigarettes.
Right.
You know, cigarette packs
it's-
are really beautiful.
Yeah. The colors.
I am
the
not telling you
pictures.
to smoke, but I'm telling
Right,
you that
right, yeah.
cigarette, the way that cigarettes are packaged is really beautiful.
Yeah.
The packaging is beautiful, even though the content is really filthy.
Right.
Alcohol bottles are just so unbelievably well and beautifully designed, even though the content is terrible.
Right.
But people have made, you know, a lot of wrong right simply because of the way that it was packaged.
Right.
And I would say that we have miserably failed in the way that we have packaged Islam.
Okay.
The content is beautiful,
Right.
but whoever was in charge of advertising for it
Marketing it.
or marketing it, they did a
Right.
terrible, horrible job. And that is us, by the way.
Right.
We're not blaming outsiders.
no,
We're just saying
yeah.
that this
We're
is,
not doing a
this
good
is
job
really,
of promoting
this is
the
it.
goodness.
Especially within our own children. So, for example, the way that Islam is usually presented is a bunch of haram. This is haram, this is haram, this
Right.
is haram. So by the end of the day,
kids get turned off from
Islam
that.
is
yeah.
just having taken all of your freedoms and the
Yeah.
things that you like from, you know,
Right.
from you. And I'm afraid that that's really not how the deen of Allah is. If anything, it's very liberating.
Right.
Mm.
So now when we talk about having the 5 T's, and this is something that you can't just develop overnight. This is obviously, you have to give it some time with
The
your
first
kids. Right.
Time.
Over a number of months and weeks and however long it may be, so that the kids can actually open up, build that trust, and be able to have the confidence to say, look, so and so is involved in that, or I was offered this, I didn't know what it was. What are your thoughts, and how can I get away from that? Sometimes people just will get into a situation where they're within the family, for example, as close as family, and there's a handful of kids and they all do something, and then they look at him and say, wow, you're not doing this, you're just a kid, you're this, you're that. It puts them in a very difficult position. It's peer pressure. Now, how can you explain to kids that it's not good to fall into that peer pressure?
Yeah. They say that because we are social beings, acceptance is such a driving motive for us,
Right.
that we do want to be accepted by those
Right.
who are around us. So initially, as kids, we want to be accepted by our parents.
Right.
A kid would draw anything on a piece of paper, say, Dad, can you watch this? Can you see
Yeah.
this? And they expect your approval.
Right.
Because acceptance and approval are very important for us as human beings. And as we grow older, we expand on our circle of approval
Bigger
and
networks,
acceptance. You
right.
know what? Now we want other family members. Now we want
Right.
our friends, and we want our teacher, and we want the whole world to approve and accept us. But they say that what happens is that if kids are still accepted and
Right.
approved of when they say no within the family, they have a better chance of saying no and remain to be accepted in the outside world.
Okay.
Meaning that it said that if we make our family safe enough for our kids to say no and still be respected and still
Okay.
be accepted and
Right.
approved of within that family, then that kid is not going to be afraid of saying
saying
no
no outside. Right. So it comes back to that basic communication.
Exactly.
And having, if for example your kid says, I will not do this, well, don't reprimand them for that.
Yep.
Explain to them what it is that you need, and convince them in other words.
Yeah, but
Okay.
see, most of the time, we think that kids ought to know this,
Right.
but reality is, kids do what we've taught them.
Right. Absolutely.
So what is really beautiful about it is that allowing kids to say no and remain to be accepted in the outside world, they will know, they've been taught that saying no does not make you bad.
Right.
Saying no
It's
will
your
not-
stance.
Exactly.
Right. It's your stance, and it's because you believe in X, Y, and Z.
Precisely.
And it comes
Precisely.
back to also to talking about some of the vices. For example, just because parents don't talk about the vices, and vices by that I mean, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it may be, guns, knives, everything that can harm folks. Just because parents don't talk about it with their kids doesn't necessarily mean that they're not surrounded by it and they don't see it, especially on TV.
Sure.
You know, earlier you mentioned Sylvester Stallone, and you mentioned, you know, Rambo, and of course.
That just tells you how old I am.
But it's there, and same thing with advertisement. Every time you watch advertisement, whether it be with cigarettes, whether it be with alcohol, they tend to paint a beautiful picture. What kid wouldn't want to be involved in something like that? But being able to pull them back.
Not to be sounding like we're sending the wrong message here. This is not about blaming the parents, because sometimes parents would say, I said all that stuff to them.
It didn't register.
And I did all that stuff to them, and it did not.
Right.
But see, the likelihood of it registering when you say it, see, when you say it, you have a chance.
Right.
If you've never said it, there is no chance.
That's right. And you have to repeat it over and over again, because
Precisely.
first time, people may not hear it, and then there's also interpretation,
Precisely.
right?
Precisely.
Did you say what you said, and did it really mean what I meant? Let me take one more call, and then we're going to go into just a short commercial break. بله برنامه امبسی افغانان بفرمایید.
سلام علیکم، چطور هستید؟
و علیکم، مهربان، زنده باشین. صحت شما خوب است؟
شما سلام برای شیخ یاسر.
و علیکم السلام.
پروگرام‌های خوب دارین، تیمور جان کالگی تعریفتان نمیکنه، بسیار پروگرام شما خوب است، همیشه پروگرام‌های شما را می‌بینیم، خدا شما را نگیره. شیخ یاسر هم بسیار نفر خوب است. تشکر از پروگرام‌هایتان، بسیار زیاد تشکر.
تشکر از شما.
پروگرام‌های مقبولتان بسیار تشکر.
مهربان هستین، تشکر از وقت شما. تشکر بسیار زیاد. روز خوش. Caller wanted to thank you for the good advice, and also wanted to thank us as a show here in making sure that we contribute back to the community and bring on good shows. So, so Farijan, if you have that video, there's a show called X Factor, and this is where folks can go and sing, and there's a panel just like American Idol, and the panel will actually grade them based on how they sing, the content of the song, and whether they're capable of moving on to the next round. Now, I chose this because I wanted folks to see if, for example, there's a time when you feel like you're having a bad day, or if you feel like today's just not your day, and that you really are down, and that life is bad. I want you to think about this song. Because I've watched this show in the past. It's about a young Iraqi boy who grew up in Iraq, and he was adopted by an Australian mother. So we're going to play the song, and then we'll come back, and we'll continue on. And I wanted to hear one of Sheikh's favorite Islamic stories. So stay with us.
Hey man.
How you doing?
What's your name?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel. So who's here with you today?
My mum, my cousin, my auntie, and my brother.
How old are you?
Well, actually, I'm not exactly sure. When I was originally found in Iraq, in an orphanage, my mum found me. I was born with no birth certificate, no passport, nothing. My story is that I was born in the middle of a war zone. My brother and I, we were found by the nuns in a box in a park, in a shoebox. They brought me to the orphanage. We'd hear shots, noises that we didn't understand. It was like looking at an angel when Mum, Moira Kelly, walked through the orphanage door. She brought us both to Australia for surgery originally. And then sort of Mum fell in love with both of us. My hero would have to be my mother. She worked very, very hard, extremely hard, to change my life hugely. You know, some people will say I was a man without an identity, but with my mother and with my brother, I believe that I can do this, you know.
Wow, good on you, man.
Thank you.
Good on you, Emmanuel. So what are you going to sing?
I'm going to sing Imagine by John Lennon.
Beautiful. Whoa. Good luck, mate.
Thank you. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Yahoo! Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to live or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Whoa, man.
I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Thank you.
Welcome back to the show. I wanted to play that video for you to give you an idea, a sense as far as just because you think you have a bad day, you need to consider others in the world. And just like this poor young man, and if you noticed, he also had a brother who's also handicapped, and but just to watch him sing with so much passion. And that big smile just really puts tears in my eyes every time I watch this. And I just wanted to play that for folks who feel that maybe they are at their wit's end, maybe that there's no outlet, maybe they need help, and that there's really no, they're having a bad day. For example, you're driving, somebody cuts you off, there goes your day. Well, you know what, that's okay. Let the person go. Maybe that person needs to be somewhere a little bit faster than you. But it's we didn't play the rest of the video. There's obviously the judges talk about, but if you pull up the video on YouTube, you'll see for yourself how each one of those 4 panelists just they're in tears. And every time I watch this, quite frankly, I'm in tears because it just shows that that smile just shows so much love, and I just wanted, especially the young folks, to think about that next time you want to consider. An action that may actually harm you or harm someone else, just remember that you might be in a better position in life. And I wanted to come back and ask your opinion on some folks who actually do reach out. There's different methods of reaching out. Some people are open and they come out and they say, look, I need help. Please help me. Some folks will actually do something to get attention, to get help. And then other folks, for example, this caller was actually a good example of someone who called, and he opened up and wanted to ask a good question, and then he kind of turned around and used some words that aren't, quite frankly, good for a show like this, because this is a family show. But regardless, they do something like that because they're angry about something, whatever that may be, as an outlet. What are some of the ways that you can help diffuse that tension or identify the need for help?
Yeah. Let me just go back to you were talking about the video.
Right.
But remember, it's okay to have a bad day.
Right.
And what happens is that a bad day does not necessarily have to translate into a bad life.
Right.
Okay. So when we say that it is just part of being human, is that, you know what, we all have our days of blues. We all have our days where we don't think that life is fair or life is good or what have you. The hope is that these feelings are not the dominant feelings in our day, because that would make life very gloomy.
Right.
But what happens is that when you understand that you're having a bad day, remember, it's just the day.
Right.
It's not your life. It's not
And it
your
may not
week
even
or
be
your
the
year.
whole day.
By all
Just
means.
By
all means.
Yeah.
And you know, subhanAllah, we do have a class. It's on empowerment and self-development. And these are the type of things that we talk about. And also remember that people have this impression that because I am a Muslim, because I'm a believer, because I'm a practicing Muslim, I should not have bad days.
Right.
I would say no. That Islam does not shield you from being depressed or having a bad day. Good Muslims, practicing Muslims can also be depressed.
Right.
What Islam shields us from is going into despair.
Right.
That is what religion can offer us. Religion does not automatically shield you from depression, but it offers you a tool that will prevent you from going into despair.
Okay. Yeah,
And that
so
is
that's sense of community. I guess.
by
Yeah.
all means,
Right.
by all means, be it in the form of community, you know, your relationship with your Creator, you know,
Right.
the fact that you take solace in your prayers or whatever it
Right.
is. But it's just the whole notion about it's the despair that is problematic. It's not necessarily the depression that is problematic. So that is that. And the question is, well, what happens when you're having the bad day? When you're having a bad day does not have to be because of depression. It could be anxiety. A great number of our people, especially our community, because they have come from, and I'm talking about the Afghan community,
Right.
assuming that the majority of the people are watching
naturally
are from
right.
Afghanistan. Remember, these are people who have been exposed to war.
Right.
So it's very common that people have some sort of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder,
Right.
in the form of anxiety, paranoia, nightmares,
Right.
and so on. So a bad day does not only revolve around depression, it could also be because of the anxiety that the person might be going through because of what they're
Past
remembering
experience,
or what have you. What we usually tell people is empowering people both at an intellectual level, making sure that your thoughts are not making your feelings foggy. Remember that our feelings are really the products of our thoughts. Our thoughts produce our feelings. So sometimes people worry so much about the feeling, forgetting that if they want to remedy the negative feeling that they're feeling, what they really need to do is go back to the thought that is generating that feeling.
The root cause.
Which is, what kind of a thought
Right.
are you having? And what we do at that point is that, so the behavior is usually the birth of a feeling, which is really the product of a thought. So if we want to change the behavior, we will have to go back not to the feelings, but rather to the thoughts that are generating the feelings that just produce that specific behavior. So in counseling, what we do is that once you start talking to the person, what you do is that you custom make the preventions, as we call them, to that individual, to see that, you know what, in their case, what would really suit them best. So for example, I couldn't tell people to work out.
Right.
Maybe they're too, you know, let's say they're not feeling well physically to the point that they can work out and so on. So what we do is that we take it and we custom make it around the person who's presenting the problem. However, and again, you know, we're speaking as people who are guided by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and guided by Allah, in a sense that when you're having that bad day, when you are thinking of an outlet, make sure that the outlet is not illegal, it is not haram and lawful, and it is not inappropriate. So what we're looking for is healthy ways of finding an outlet. Like the video that you showed, for example. You know, there was a bumper sticker that beautifully read, you know, if life gives you lemon, make lemonade out of it.
Make the best of the situation.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, we don't choose the cards that are dealt to us.
You gotta
but you
deal with them.
You know,
yeah.
deal with them.
Yeah.
Or like the Quran tells us, you know what, you will for sure be tested. You don't choose the type of the test, and you do not choose the timing of the test. However, how you react to the test is fully up to you.
Right.
What we want is that make sure that we have the appropriate tools so that we can best react to the test. And usually they say that whenever we are faced with a problem, we have one of three choices. We can either accept, we can either change, or we have to modify.
Okay.
And subhanAllah, in order to make the distinction between which is which, we really need to have a lot of wisdom to do so. However, what happens is that sometimes life is miserable because we accept things that we can really change. And we attempt to change things that we must really accept. At that point, that is a recipe for misery right there.
You're trying to project on the outside rather than controlling yourself.
So these would be like some of the things that we would be talking about, you know, with the individual. Of course, this is all happening after listening to them, hearing them out, and what have you. Reaching out can be via many things. Like you said, you know, people don't want to just come and talk to the imam. They're not ready for it.
They're too proud, or they're not ready, or whatever.
Or they're afraid, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're meeting somebody for the first time, a complete stranger, and you've got to tell them all these, you know, dark secrets of yours. So we understand.
It takes time. Yeah.
It takes time. So I would say you can call in. We do actually take phone appointments where people have called us before. Sometimes we will say, can you Skype?
Okay.
We have got some legal issues with whether we can Skype
and
with
keep
people
it private
from out of the States.
Oh, because of licensing issues.
Because of licensing issues. Okay. But if you speak to me in the capacity of an imam, not in the capacity of a counselor, then you can be wherever wherever you are. And so on. But the point is that you can reach out to us to give you resources where you are.
Okay.
So that this way, inshallah, the point is really it's just about reaching out.
Right, reaching out and help, right. And some folks tend to use various means of reaching out, and I think that regardless if you see the signs, if you see folks who need help, you know, the best thing you could do is guide them in the right direction. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be their counselor, because you certainly are not qualified to provide them with that proper guidance, but you can definitely listen to them and at least send them in the right direction.
And sometimes that's the best advice, that's the best thing that you can tell people.
To get help.
And that is to get help.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Now, there's also a national number that we've had one of our previous guests on the show mention, and I think it's 211, is it?
Well, there's 211. 211 is about resources in your area.
Okay.
So you can call 211 and you can ask them about, you know what, I'm having car problems, you know what, because sometimes non-profit organizations would have like allocate part of their budget to help people with car problems, to help budget with their utilities, find out about, you know, where some of the shelters are, you know, if anybody's giving free food, if any counseling provided in different services and so on. So 211 is really about the resources within the county.
So when you pick up the phone, you dial, it's through the county, the local municipality, basically.
Well, I mean, 211 is not the county, but they are aware of the resources within the county.
Okay, so this is nationwide. This is not just here in Southern California.
As far as I know, 211 is at this point is in California.
Okay.
I'm sorry, in Orange County to be more specific.
Just in Orange County. Okay, so for folks that live in this area, they can at least utilize that as well. Okay, great. I also wanted to hear one of your favorite Islamic stories, because I always enjoy you know, the khutbahs, and every time you speak, there's some level of guidance, some nugget, as people call it, that I take with me. And if you could share with us one of your stories, the viewers would certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, stories are really a great way of teaching, and that is why, you know, human history, they say that, is usually passed in the form of stories.
Right.
Even history is really just the retelling of a story, depending, of course, on who is telling the story. But one element I absolutely love are the compassion aspect on the part of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the Quran has said several times in the Quran that he is a mercy to mankind. And that mercy to mankind has always been the story of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But more specifically is really his mercy towards the so-called sinners. Okay. One of my favorite story is, you know, a drunk person who was brought to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and people were just rebuking him, scolding him, calling him all sorts of names. And the Prophet ﷺ said, people, stop calling him names. I know this man, and this man loves Allah and His Messenger. And I love that story. Because you and I make the claim that we love Allah and His Messenger.
Right.
But we don't have Muhammad ﷺ to say, Taymor and Yassir really love Allah and His Messenger. But that person, despite the fact that he was
a drunk,
the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, that man loves Allah and His Messenger.
Yeah, in other words,
So-
don't judge.
And you know what? We all have our weaknesses. We all have our struggles. We all have our dark secrets that we don't want exposed to other people. But the point is, for those who get that, you know what? By no means they are lower than us, or are we better than they are.
Right.
And in that story, you know what? As people are just, busy scolding and rebuking the guy, what the Prophet said, just leave the man alone, passing judgment like that on other people. So, to me, that is really ought to be the attitude of our Muslim community towards people who are making poor choices at this point.
Right.
And there are many of us out there who are making poor choices on daily basis.
Right.
And what we need is not somebody rebuking us, but really somebody just, holding us by the hand. They say that the only time that you are allowed to look down upon a person is if you're trying to pick them up.
That's a great, powerful way
It really is. It really
Absolutely,
is.
yeah.
Only time you are allowed to look down upon a person
If you're helping
is
them.
if you are trying to help them get up.
Right.
And I would say, subhanallah, we speak about these vices, and by no means we are suggesting that we are better because we are not involved in these vices. Maybe we are involved in vices, they just happen to be different than the ones that we've been talking about. Or maybe we just have not been exposed.
Right. And time will, eventually expose some
And
of
so,
these things,
the
right?
point is, with humility, compassion towards those who are not making proper choices at this point, I think that we can really be, more humane in our approach and in our teachings of our religion.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, as always, for what you do for our community. It seems like you're available 24/7, and for that, the community really appreciates your help. You've done a tremendous job here locally, but you also have a number of videos online as well. So for folks who have enjoyed our show tonight, they can certainly watch this show as well on YouTube. But there are others as well that Sheikh Fazaga has published in the past, and there's certainly many articles that you've published, and you're truly the foundation of our community here in Southern California. And I wanted to thank you for taking the time to come here tonight to share your thoughts with our viewers, especially the younger ones that really need the guidance and that tend to find a certain level of distance in being able to reach out, and fearing that they might not be able to reach out to their parents or otherwise. So this is just truly a great experience. And
it was certainly very good being with you, and thank you for the invitation, the people who are watching and the people who called in. And remember, the unsung heroes are truly the foundation of our community. As the Imam, you become the visible face of the community.
Right.
But that by no means that, it really does not mean anything other than the fact that you just happen to be the most visible person within the, or one amongst the more visible people in the community. But I think that it is the parent who works real hard for the betterment of their child. That is a real hero. It is the child who is, despite of all the invitations that they get at school to join vices, and they remain to say no, I would say that is really the real hero. It is the people, despite their struggles, still putting a smile on their face. These are the real heroes in our community. Or the people who are just trying to make a difference without them being known, but the difference that they make is felt. I would say that these are the real heroes within our community, and these are the people that we appreciate, and people acknowledge them even though they may not be known who they are, but their contributions are certainly felt. And just one last point, please do not make your judgment of Islam be determined by what people do with Islam.
Right.
You'll be very disappointed.
Absolutely.
If you think Islam is Fazaga, you will be very disappointed.
Right.
Or anybody else. I think that we ought to appreciate Islam for what it is, not necessarily for who is representing.
And then there's a
This
difference
way.
between the two, and you
By
talked
all
more
means.
about that earlier.
And the point is that I think that we will appreciate Islam better when we appreciate it for what it is rather than who represents it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for taking the time. I wanted to also just remind the younger folks that today is again Mother's Day. I'm sure you've all had a wonderful time with your families, with your mothers. Make sure that you kiss them before you go to bed tonight, kiss their hands, kiss their cheeks, kiss their feet, and thank them for all the hard work that they do for you. And obviously for parents, both parents, you know, fathers and mothers, the amount of effort that they put towards raising you, the amount of hard work that they go through on a daily basis to make sure that you have a shirt on your back, food on the table, and they actually have a path for you to be more successful in the future. So I've chosen a song for my mother, as well as all the other mothers around the world. And I wanted to go ahead and play that, and we'll go ahead and see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.